Welcome back.
Welcome back to A Work in Progress with Mark and Pete.
That's us.
We're happy you're here. I'm the Mark one.
I'm the Pete one.
And it's so good.
Thanks for joining us and hanging out.
Hang out with us and spend this time with us.
How long do you use a toothbrush before you swap it out?
Ooh. I mean,
not how long do you think one should? How long do you use a toothbrush before you swap it?
Well, this is going to be embarrassing because I didn't know you were supposed to swap out toothbrushes.
So we're talking like 6 months or what?
6 months?
How long do you use a toothbrush?
Are you supposed to swap it out every 6 months?
I don't know. I would think it's probably more like 3-ish months, every 3 months or so.
I swap out my toothbrush when it stops functioning.
When all the bristles are gone.
Yeah.
And it's down to
You're
the bone.
supposed to swap out your toothbrush?
I thought so. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense, like something you should do.
Like hygienic wise.
Yeah, 6 months. Years.
You go years without swapping. Dude, you were gonna get some comments about that.
You didn't even know that was a thing.
This is why we have to talk. No, I would say that the average person is probably 2 to 3 months, I would guess. But yeah, I mean, if you're using the same toothbrush and it's, sitting out and it's in the air and all this stuff, and I would just think bacteria collection over time, you'd want to swap it out.
Well, it all makes sense. It's just nothing I've ever thought about before.
Hey, again, this is why we talk.
My word, I need a new toothbrush.
I need a new toothbrush immediately.
Do you use the electric toothbrush or like a manual?
I used to be manual.
Yeah.
And I brush way too hard because my assumption.
That's why you're swapping them out every 3 months.
There's no brushes left. There's no bristles.
Poking yourself with a stick.
Yeah, basically. No, I went to the dentist for like a annual cleanup or cleaning, and they were like, I told them there's some sensitivity in a couple of spots, and they're like, yeah, you're probably like pushing pretty hard. Like you're just supposed to like touch the top of the surface of the tooth and go like that, or like circles or whatever. Yeah. But I like push against the tooth and like, because my assumption being a man is like the harder and stronger I go, the more effective it's going to be. And, it's like, no, apparently.
Scrape away all the decay.
There will be no enamel left. Apparently that's the wrong move. So what they said to do is actually, they encouraged me to get an electric one where that has like the spinning
just
top.
like put it on there?
You kind of just put it there, move it, and then it reduces the urge to scrape and scrub. Yeah. So I've been using the electric one now, but this comes to the next one is like I'm coming up on like 3-ish months of the same top. Yeah. But those ones is like a replaceable top thing. Yeah, you twist it off. Yeah. Yeah. So I need to look into getting a new one of those.
I've always wondered why they sold replacement tops.
Yeah. You only need one for life.
You only need one.
Yeah.
Until
I rinse it every time.
It dies.
Yeah.
By the time the top is not working anymore, just get a new toothbrush. It's been 7 years. Why would you just spend money on a new top?
Oh my goodness.
So much new technology since then.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, electric is the way to go.
Is that what you have?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just got to replace the batteries.
Oh, it's a battery one?
Is yours not a battery one?
It's rechargeable. So there's like a...
You set it out in the sun?
Yeah, it's solar powered. It's a 15-pound toothbrush. It's just got a panel that's like over here. Hitting myself in the face with it as I'm trying to brush. No, it's rechargeable. There's like a
rechargeable that plugs in?
Yeah, so there's like a base that you plug in and you set it on the base to charge. But you only have to charge it like once a week. And the charge will last, so I don't always have to put it back. Because Henry will like unplug it and like, so I'll usually put the charging base somewhere else.
Dude. But if that ever runs out of charge, like archaic, then you just have to like brush your teeth normal with it.
It's like an escalator that breaks down. It's like escalators can't break down; they just turn into stairs.
That's right.
Electric toothbrushes can't.
They're just standing there looking at them. They're like,
"What are we supposed to do now?
I can't go upstairs.
Am I supposed to scale the wall somehow?" No, but electric toothbrush can't break. It just turns into a regular toothbrush. Yeah,
that's right. Man. I gotta stall. I gotta look this up now. You're supposed to replace your toothbrush.
Yeah. I wonder what Google says. Let's look it up.
How often should you replace your toothbrush?
You know what we need is once we get like famous and stuff and we can afford to pay people.
Wow. The suggestions are: how often should you wash your hair? How often should you poop? How often?
Actually, that makes sense. I'm sure that's a common issue for a lot of people.
It's true. How often should you change?
Let's not get too into it because I was about to really dive into that question. And
what? You're right. Every 3 to 4 months, the average person should be swapping out for a new toothbrush every 3 to 4 months. Oh my word. I need to apologize to my teeth immediately. Wow.
You're welcome.
Do you really need to replace your toothbrush every 3 months?
Is that the next one?
Yeah.
Is it really necessary?
As soon as you realize that your toothbrush bristles are pointing in the wrong direction or becoming worn down, you should replace it. However, as a general rule of thumb, you should try to replace every 3 months. Wow.
We're really learning and growing, aren't we?
I guess.
Oh, man.
What happens if you don't?
It's probably fine. I don't know. One thing I thought of, because I heard this on a radio station once, it was like AM radio, and they were talking about toothbrushes and when you're sick. And this one guy's theory was, if you're sick, like you have a cold or the flu or something, to swap your toothbrush every day. Because if you think about it, the bacteria and like the cells that are like getting you sick are probably in your mouth too.
Yeah.
And they're getting onto your toothbrush. So if you're putting it back in your mouth, you could be reinfecting yourself with the same sickness over and over. So maybe throw it away.
And I was like, oh, that made sense. Once I'm not sick anymore, I'll get a new toothbrush.
Are you sick?
No.
Oh, you mean in that situation?
In that situation.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not sick, then I'll get a new toothbrush.
Sure, there you go.
Once I'm not sick.
Once the sickness goes away.
Yeah. So maybe I'm getting sick like every 3 months.
Every 3 months.
And just replacing my toothbrush that way.
There you go.
But it doesn't feel that way.
Wow. I'm glad we just chatted for 8 minutes on teeth and toothbrush.
Because my teeth are like, I think I have decent teeth.
You do. Give me a good smile. Let me see them. There you go. They're good.
I don't get cavities and stuff like that. So
that's good.
Every time I go up, they're like, everything looks good.
Cool. Maybe that is the key. Maybe Google's wrong and everyone else is wrong.
Because they're destroying your teeth.
It's just a big scheme by the toothbrush companies.
That's right. Like those people that live to be like
off Google.
98. What was the trick? I drank a Dr. Pepper every day.
Yeah. Smoke a cigar and have some whiskey.
That's right.
Wow. Okay. I've been doing it wrong.
That's right.
It's like a 12-year-old smoking a cigar. What are you doing? I'm trying to live to be 100.
Be the oldest man alive.
Yeah.
His voice is down here.
Yeah. Lay off me, Mom. Trying to live forever. I saw it on YouTube.
Oh, that's so good. All right, I'll buy a new toothbrush.
All right, fine. Maybe we could get sponsored by Crest or something.
They'll send us toothbrushes every 3 months.
Yeah, the 99-cent toothbrush. God forbid you have to go to the dollar store and get a toothbrush, a 3-pack for 99 cents. Oh man! Couldn't find it in the budget. I'm going on 3 years. I'm pushing 3 years with this bad boy. Still works. Tongue scraper's intact on the back. You ever see the toothbrush with the tongue scraper?
You're supposed to scrape your tongue too?
You're not. You know,
terrible oral hygiene, apparently.
Where did you go to school? No. I don't know that you're supposed to scrub your tongue. Usually I'll brush my tongue just gently at the end. Yeah, that makes sense. But they have those toothbrushes with like rubber little indent things on the flip side. Dude, you're killing me.
I legitimately thought it was like a grip so it wouldn't move on the counter. Like you sit on the counter and it wouldn't go anywhere.
Do you brush your teeth with your toes? I want to see your routine now and just see. Oh, this is fantastic. I hope your parents see this.
Like the grossest human thing.
No, your mom and dad are going to watch and listen and be like, honey, we're supposed to be swapping our toothbrushes. And when you go to the store to get a toothbrush, grab some whiskey and a cigar. We're going to live forever.
Make it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my word, that's good. Woo. All right.
Anyways,
we'll do it. How's life going for you?
Pretty good. Doing this new eating thing, so I'm trying to eat cleaner. I own a gym, so I gotta lead by example better. And my overall like energy and like mental clarity, like the last few months, has just not been what it should be because I haven't been eating and exercising to where I know I should be. And it's not just leading by example. It's like I want to feel better. So I just started that July 1st. So I've been kind of going through the changes of like sometimes you have to feel worse before you feel better.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of like pushing through that feeling worse part, but I know the better is coming. So it'll be all right.
I mean, it's got to be an adjustment. Any big change like that is a big adjustment.
Yeah. Yep. And I've noticed the best thing for me mentally to do is just say, okay, I'm either fasting or I'm eating healthy.
Oh, wow.
Because normally I've done this many times where it's like, I'll be eating kind of bad and then I want to start fresh. And I'll start eating better. But then like at the first, like, oh, I don't have anything prepared and I don't have time and I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I'll go back to whatever like the easy, quick thing is, whether it's going to the gas station and buying some hot food off the shelf or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, why'd I do that? But I mean, we don't have to eat 3 meals a day. Like we really don't. We can, but anyways, so making that adjustment of like, okay, I'm either going to prepare, I'm going to have food ready, and there's plenty of like healthy snacks like fruit and nuts and stuff like that, or leftovers from the night before. So just going into it with the mindset of I'm either not going to eat or I'm going to eat healthy instead of I'll eat healthy if I feel like doing it. It's like, it's not going to work.
And in reality, I mean, if you don't eat for 10 hours, you're going to be okay.
You're going to be fine. There's actually a lot of really intelligent people that would argue that fasting is better for you to do once in a while. Fasting being like 1 day, 2 day, 3 days max. If you do more than 3 days, you really have to talk to like a doctor or like a professional. But you'll be fine. It's actually a really good cleanse.
In college, I did a week-long fast.
On purpose?
Just couldn't find food anywhere.
I had to buy a toothbrush. I was out of money.
I did a week-long fast.
Was it for like a religious thing?
Yeah, it was just for spiritual clarity. And
cool. Was it a group? Was it a group all doing it or just you?
No, just me.
Okay, cool.
But after a week, I decided that I was going to end it because TGI Fridays promoted that they were doing an unlimited soup, salad, and breadsticks.
Of course.
And so that's how I broke my fast.
Wow, nice.
The worst idea ever.
You felt awful?
I went to the bathroom and threw up after my first 3 bites.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah.
How did you feel though, like throughout the fast? Like, I'm curious. Do you remember much of it?
Yeah. I mean, it was hard through day 3, and then it wasn't that bad after day 3.
I've heard that from quite a few people. Yeah. It's like that adjustment period is like, because you're not used to your stomach just like writhing and being like, hey, we're empty here. But once it's like the thing, same thing with going on a diet. It gets worse first before it gets better.
And it's weird. It's like every morning. It's not like you're waking up in the morning and be like, oh, I'm starving. It like feels like a new day.
Yeah.
It's just like you're fasting again that day.
You probably get more done too because you're not planning and prepping and cleaning and all that stuff.
Driving through drive-thrus and stuff like that.
That's really the perk of drive-thrus and going out to eat is like you're not spending any time preparing the food, cooking the food, cleaning up after yourself, doing dishes, all that stuff.
I mean, it's a huge time saver.
It is. It unless like because there are arguments to be made of like, okay, breakfast, for example, you could just make eggs, which take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And oftentimes if you go through a McDonald's drive-thru at breakfast time and busy, you're going to wait more than that to get your food.
Yeah. So
it's kind of dependent on a few things, but
yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. They should. Is this doable? Or I mean, why have they? Why is there yet to be created a like super healthy drive-through option.
I've thought about this, and then it's because people have that idea and then nobody does it. It's just like we were talking about, like the manifesting things.
Yeah.
It's like so many people have great ideas and they're just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this existed?
Yeah.
And then they're like, yeah, I'll just leave it to somebody else. So then no one else does it.
Nobody does it.
But I feel like it could be potentially really lucrative and popular spot if there was like a at least reasonably healthy drive-through quick option for people. And they would pay more than a fast food place to get the healthy food.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. I mean, that's, first of all, food business is brutal. Like your margins are probably pretty thin.
That's what I was thinking.
You know, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. You don't got to worry about.
Fast food can be cheaper is because they're not worried about quality as much.
Right. Yeah. Because then you got to worry about like keeping your food sanitary, keeping it fresh. Because if you have a healthy place, you know, you're going to have probably lots of like vegetables and fruit and stuff like that, which goes bad quicker than a frozen burger does.
Yeah.
So there's just probably a lot that goes into it.
They just need to make like a salad-focused drive-through place where you go through and you order your salad, choose your protein, all that stuff. That seems
simple enough to me.
And then come up with a way that you can eat a salad while driving.
Yeah, that's also the factor is eating it. You have to sit. You can't really drive and eat. Well, a wrap, I guess.
Yeah, you can do like a wrap maybe.
Kind of like a sandwich.
You do like a lettuce wrap.
Yeah, lettuce wrap. Yeah, that's fairly mobile. Salad to go.
I like the idea.
I think you're onto something. Why don't you start it?
Nah.
Exactly. So that you can make $10,000 a year and put 80 hours a week into it.
That's right.
That's how it would go. And then tax season comes, you're like, how do I owe $20,000 in taxes? I made $10,000. This doesn't make any sense.
How does this work?
Thanks, Uncle Sam. Anyways.
You're not wrong.
So prove to me that God exists.
Oh, my word, I love you.
Best segue of all time. Let me just ask you the hardest question there is.
You are a master at transitions, my friend.
Wouldn't salads on the go be cool? But tell me about God.
Oh, goodness.
The world's most frequent and most important question. Does God exist?
Do you think a lot of people ask that question?
I think throughout most people's adult lives, they at least flirt with that question, especially going through like difficult times. Like, oh, and that's actually probably one of my most reoccurring questions is when like
that you ask yourself or that people ask you?
That I ask myself is when there's like catastrophic, horrific events. Okay, how does God allow those things to be in the world? And how do we justify that to people who are asking that question as well? It's like, it's really tough to, because you want to defend your faith, but it's tougher when they're like, hey, my 5-year-old got cancer. Like, explain that to me. Where's your God now? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's that part is a challenge, but I think we should postpone that question.
Man, that's a good question.
And go back to the very beginning of, so you have a lot of training and education and all of that in theology. So if I was a non-believer, so I'll just try and play devil's advocate slightly because I believe God exists.
Oh, good.
For sure. Yeah. I'm a firm believer in the Lord and a creator. So if I was coming to you and be like, I don't believe God exists, explain to me why you think he does.
Man, but so to limit this to a conversation is difficult.
Sure.
Because there's so many different. Apologetics is the defense of the divine, kind of.
Okay.
And so there's so many different apologetic arguments that can be made. So some of them are just like, what is the first cause? And if you keep going back, at some point there has to be an uncaused cause.
What does that mean?
So there has to be something that that predates the next thing to create it.
So like the origin of the universe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there has to be something that, there has to be something that caused the universe. There has to be something that created the material, the first thing.
Right.
And at some point, there has to be this uncaused cause, something that was before there was nothing. Or something there was before there was something.
Right.
Because something can't come out of nothing.
Correct.
So there has to always be something there.
Right.
So I would argue that uncaused cause would be the divine, the causer and the creator of everything that happened. There's the argument of this ethical, moral law that has been kind of written on humanity's heart.
Yeah. Conscience.
Conscience, that we all kind of agree on this general scope of what good and bad is. And so it's interesting that usually lines up generally with what God says is good and bad.
Right.
There is
just to interject there, even if it's things that we don't like want to agree with, in our heart, a lot of times it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like when you're reading through the Bible and the things that God says are sinful, it's like, okay, it's like, even though that might be a temptation for an individual, most people, again, would align and agree that like, okay, if we avoided these things that God says are bad, things would probably be better.
Yeah.
So I was just agreeing with you.
The reason murder is illegal isn't necessarily because the Bible says we shouldn't murder, it's because society agrees that we shouldn't murder.
Right. Yeah.
And so that kind of comes from God. And then there's also just this relational component that the people who believe in God are relating and interacting with something and someone. And so kind of looking at what that is and how they relate to that and how they interact with that. And then you have the fact that these sacred texts in the scriptures point to a divine and a creator and a God. And then that leads to a different question as to whether those sacred texts are legit or not. And that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've realized is that I don't know if you can logically come to a belief in God. I don't know if purely through logic someone can be convinced there is a God. But there has to be this element of faith, this element of being okay with the unknown.
Yeah.
This element of trust. And so, there's a lot of logic out there to prove there is a God. To be fair, there's a lot of logic out there that might prove that there isn't a God.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that it's a conversation that extends past logic into the realms of faith and trust and those things as well.
Yeah. No, I would say probably one of the best logical arguments would be what you already touched on, which is if there is something that has been created, there is something, it must have come from a creator. In high school, we read, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, which I think is pretty cool. A lot of the stuff in there makes sense to me. Granted, it's not fair because I'm coming from a position of faith.
Yeah.
So I'm reading something that agrees with my bias.
Yeah.
Which, you can take it or leave it. But that was one of the things they said is like, if you look at the Mona Lisa, you don't assume there was just a bunch of paint bottles in a room and they just splashed on the canvas. You assume there was a creator. And what is more like intricate and complex than the universe we live in? And to just assume that it exploded out of absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
I think is the wrong approach, and people just trying to justify whatever their bias that they want to believe in.
Yeah. And even if it did explode and turn into the world we have, through a certain period of time. Like, where did that come from that exploded?
Yeah, because I think some atheists' argument is there were like tiny little micro atoms or atoms kind of floating in nothingness that collided, and then that was the Big Bang or whatever. And okay, sure. I mean, no one can know we weren't there.
Yeah.
Just like Christians can't know for sure. There's faith.
Yeah.
That is the atheist standpoint of, I don't know either, but I have faith that this is what happened. Two things that existed from nothing collided, and boom, that is the Big Bang.
Where did those two things come from?
Exactly, right. So that's where it's like, I think you can, without like spiritual like faith, make a logical argument that there has to at least be a creator, something that stands out of space and time and matter that created space and time and matter.
Yeah. That's
what makes sense logically to me.
Yeah.
Whether you believe whatever that creator is, I think it's hard to argue against that there is one.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. The hard part, and we've talked about this before, is that people approach this conversation of who is God from totally different points and with totally different presuppositions and totally different ideas of who God is. And so, man, it would be great if we could just lay out this linear line of logic, and anybody from anywhere look at this linear line of logic and be like, oh, yeah, there it is, proof that there's a God.
Right.
But there's so much more that goes into it. There's tragedy. I mean, that's, like you said, that's a huge one.
Yeah.
When there's tragedy, I mean, those are the points many times that people decide there must not be a God.
Right.
If this tragedy is happening.
There's I can't remember who it was now, but someone was arguing that they said that God is either all powerful. They say he's either all powerful or all good. And Christians will say he's all powerful and all good. And then they're saying, well, with all these tragedies that happen, these awful things that are almost unimaginable, like, then God is not all good because these things happen. And that is a logical argument, right? It's taken the assumption, though, that God will intervene that God will intervene in the universe to stop tragedies from happening. That's essentially what that argument is saying, is like, if he is all powerful and all good, why would he not stop this from occurring? Which is a completely fair question to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. And why would he allow it to happen? So I hesitate to give illustrations in this context because people find loopholes in every illustration. That's not the purpose of illustration.
Regardless of whatever we say, there's going to be
there's no perfect illustration.
Yeah.
But you're doing this meal plan thing. You've meal planned for people many times.
Many times.
If you gave me a meal plan, which you have, if you gave me a meal plan and I followed that meal plan, kind of, and I also supplemented it with some ice cream at night, or
supplemented, as if you're trying to improve it. I've been supplementing, Peter. You'll be proud of me.
Proud of me.
It's mostly protein and fats, good healthy fats.
Good healthy fats.
Yeah.
But if I take that meal plan and I alter it a little bit, I waver from it. I do some of it, and then I do some of my own thing, and then I don't get the results that you're telling me I'm going to get, then I'm going to be upset. Is the reason that I'm not getting the results because of your meal plan? Or is it because I've decided to go off of the meal plan?
Right.
And so often in life, we waver from what God says is good. And our world and our culture here specifically has such an individualistic mindset that it's hard for us to wrap around this humanity, this universal consequence to our sin and evil in this world, that we think, I didn't do this, so why do I get the consequence?
Yeah.
But there's so much more of this universal aspect that humanity wavered from the meal plan.
Yeah.
And suffered some natural consequences because they wavered from the meal plan, and then said, God, you didn't make a good meal plan.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't good.
Yeah.
And we experience some of those consequences. And so
I think to interject quickly, what someone's counter argument to what you just said would be, yeah, but in this instance, Peter gave a meal plan to Mark. Mark ate the ice cream. I didn't eat the ice cream, but I had bad results. And that's why it's not fair.
And you're right. It's not fair. It doesn't feel fair.
Yeah.
But God didn't, again, that's where it's not this individualist thing. It's not just that God gave me a meal plan and he gave you a meal plan, that he gave humanity this meal plan and humanity wavered from the meal plan.
I love this.
We've really stuck with this analogy here.
Yeah. I like it.
But humanity has wavered from the meal plan, so humanity.
So it affects all of humanity.
Yeah.
Oh, this is an extremely difficult question. But how much do you think the Bible verse, like sins of the father passed down to their children, affecting their children? How much do you think that is a part of it? Because do you know what the verse I'm referring to?
Yeah, and I think we see it in life. I mean, you see those generational sins, and you see consequences of generational sins as well. Like, we know scientifically that addictions can be passed down generation to generation. We know that the addictions of one, the consequences can be passed on to a child.
Yeah.
And if you have like a drug baby that's born with a mom who's like, we see those, that baby didn't do anything to do that, but they're experiencing the consequences of the choices of their parent.
Yeah.
And so we see those generational sins and the generational consequences of sins. And that's just a smaller picture of that humanity thing as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's tough though, especially like it's like when you're like a meal plan. when you're going through, like I have these last few days going through the tough part, the difficult part. That's usually the only thing you can focus on is this is hard. I'm struggling. I'm suffering, and I don't want to hear, oh, it gets better. Even though it does, right? Or even if there's an explanation, sometimes there isn't. But for that, it's your body's going through a change and it's switching fuel sources from what you had been eating, pizza, ice cream, and beer, to now what your different fuel, which is hopefully, healthy stuff, vegetables for good, healthy meats, all that stuff. No, man, not that supplement. No, not that supplement. So when someone's going through like a tragedy in life, it's very similar of like, you're in the hurt, you're in the struggle, you're in the suffering. And even if it does get better, when that is currently in front of you and what you're experiencing, that's all, most times that's all you can focus on and think about, because it's usually so heavy. And you don't want to hear someone say, oh, well, it's going to get better. It's like, you can't see what's happening right now. Like if someone loses a loved one, or a child, like, what do you can't come along and say, you know what, there's a reason for this. It's like, how dare you? Like, tell me that there's a reason my child lost their life, right? Or, oh, it's going to get better. What? So it's just those really, really challenging, tough tragedies that are real in our world, that I understand why people would be like, if there's a God, why didn't he stop this from happening?
And that's my frustration. You're going to put me on a soapbox, Peter. That's my frustration with at least the American church to an extent, is that we have said that the solution to all your problems is reading a textbook, or by sitting through this Sunday school class and this Bible study, and to accumulate all of this knowledge and understanding so that when you go through tragedy, you'll know this is what's going on. But that doesn't change what's going on.
Right.
Like, I'm still very angry at this bleeping situation that's really bleeped up.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and so I'm left. Yeah, I know all this, but this still hurts.
It's still very real.
Yeah, yeah, and it sucks. And why do I have to go through this?
Yeah.
Sure, I can read a textbook. Sure, I can understand the systematic theology of it all.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that my baby passed away, and I have to deal with that tragedy.
Yeah.
And that's where, the theology of it and the understanding and knowing offers hope, because we can tell ourselves there's a purpose, there's resurrection at the end of this, there's renewal, there's restoration. God has proven that. And that helps in the heartache. But so oftentimes, the way churches handle it, they minimize the heartache. And that heartache is very much real, and it's supposed to be real. The repercussions of wavering from God's goodness and from wandering away from the divine they're hard, and they're supposed to be hard. If they weren't hard, then we wouldn't need the divine and his goodness. But they reveal how much we long for it.
Yeah.
As a deer that pants for the water, so my soul pants for you.
Oftentimes to bring us back to God, because there is nothing else that can help us.
Yeah,
in those instances. I think of a lecture by Jim Rohn, who was kind of like a motivational, inspirational speaker of the 80s and 90s. One of the things he says is he talks about basically how he uses a crops example. Like, if you plant pumpkin seeds, you're not going to get thistles. No, that's how the world works. The seed you plant, you will reap what you sow, all these things. He said, but sometimes it hails on your crop the day before you go to harvest. You did everything right. You planted the correct seed. You made sure all the weeds were pulled. You watered it. Every single day you were out there tending your garden. And the day before the harvest, it hails on your crop and you lose it all. And he's like, so then the question is, what did I do wrong? And he said, nothing. It's just that kind of planet.
Yeah.
Sometimes it will hail on your crop. And that's just the way the world works.
And you're left there just asking, what the hell?
What the hell? Nice. That was quality. Yeah. Just because I thought of this. So, the Witties vegetable farm?
Yeah.
So the Witties come to the gym. And Susie came up with this t-shirt. I think it's fantastic. So they're a vegetable farm. Yeah. And on the back, she, for the sleeveless shirt, she said, this is my crop top.
That's good.
Because they have crops.
And
that's their top. I was like, Susie, that's a 10.
Good work.
That's fantastic.
Good work.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
What?
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that was perfect. That's exactly when you should. And I think that's part of, going through difficult times and tragedy is having whatever your relief can be. And sometimes, like comedians, a lot of times stand-up comedians are that way because they've gone through traumatic experiences as children or throughout their life.
Oh, yeah.
And the way they cope with it is through comedy.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is to add some levity.
A survival mechanism a lot of times.
Yeah. And I think it's a combination of that, having people to lean on and love you and have community that way of people who can encourage you. And then also ultimately relying on God of hey, this doesn't make sense to me right now, but I know you have a plan. Mm-hmm. And maybe the main message of that is you're focusing too much on outside things. You need to be focusing on me.
Yeah. Where do you think that line is? And this is something I struggle with as a pastor. Is so one of our slogans, I guess, one of the things we say regularly at the church is life is hard, don't do it alone. Mm-hmm. And we focus on the fact that life is filled with struggles, and there's hope, and there's comfort and community, and there's hope of restoration in God and who God is. But where's the line between focusing and talking about how difficult life is and the struggle of life, and focusing on kind of the good times of life? And like, where's that balance?
Man, that is a good question. And it's going to be different for every person.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the hard situation with it, is because people go through different challenges and different levels of challenges and at different points in life. And so there's people in Ozaukee County predominantly that go through life and it's not that hard.
Yeah.
And they don't have a lot of difficulties.
Yeah.
I think that's the rarity, because I think people deal with all levels of difficulty, and although all the public ways seem okay, there's a lot of personal ways that they're struggling.
I would argue slightly, and maybe this is ignorance, but that not having difficulties is a difficulty, because then you don't have any resilience, and as soon as something bad happens, you are ruined.
Yeah.
Versus, like, they say that there's like not none probably, but significantly less depression and like suicide in like third world countries. And you got to think they're struggling the most.
Yeah.
But it's like they're more grateful for what they do have, and they probably have better interaction with community, and they're like, whatever, they're struggling more.
Yeah.
Which means they're probably more resilient.
Yeah.
Versus somebody who's, handed everything that they need.
Yeah.
Because their parents made a lot of money and they never had to work very hard, and they're in a safe community and all those things. And it's like, okay, well, as soon as something happens to them, they're going to be in trouble. You know what I mean? So it's a different kind of challenge, or like it's a different kind of hard. But if you don't go through hard things, I think that's actually difficult too.
So you don't think it's ignorant to say that everybody struggles?
No, I don't think I think everybody does struggle. And it's also, there's levels to it, right? And it's not, a lot of times I would be like hesitant to talk about the things I'm struggling with, because in comparison to other people's struggles, it doesn't seem nearly as big of a deal. But you also don't get to decide how difficult something is for somebody else.
Yeah.
Because you don't have their whole background of their life and how difficult something is. For example, for me to say, oh, just come to the gym. Day one, just show up. I'll help you. It's very easy. Someone else might have had the worst traumatic experience at a gym, and they can barely look at one because of whatever happened to them. Yeah. And that is really hard for them to do, to try and start over and start somewhere new at like a gym. And I could be like, that's dumb. Like, it's really easy. You just drive here and walk in the door. But that's their struggle. And there's some people that I have it way, 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 way worse. But again, that's all just like perspective on what a struggle is. And if something is really, really hard for a person, just because it's a different level of difficulty than what you would say, it doesn't mean that it's not really, really hard for them to do, depending on whatever they've gone through, I guess. And if somebody hasn't gone through anything hard, like a lot of people in America, because we do have it really good comparatively, if they haven't gone through really hard things, doing things that aren't very hard for some people are very, very hard, because they're not used to doing difficult things.
Exactly.
Which is why I think the gym is also a good thing to do, is because it's a challenge. So it makes you more resilient to challenge in life. Not only are you getting stronger and you just feel better, but you're practicing doing a difficult thing when you don't really want to. Yeah. So that when difficult things come up, you can do better at it.
Yeah. And again, the difficult thing isn't necessarily something that should be avoided.
Right.
It's
oftentimes that's the thing we should be doing.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
You play guitar. So I mean, when you're playing guitar, I mean, when I was starting to play guitar, my brother plays guitar, and he was like, "You just got to keep playing, and it's going to hurt like crazy when you're playing guitar, but you just keep playing, and then eventually it goes away as you build up the calluses on your fingertips, and it's fine then. But when you first start out, if you stop and let it, I mean, even with working out, like if you don't work out anytime your body hurts when you're working out, like and just give yourself that time off, then
you'll never go back. Yeah, because you always have a minor ache or pain or whatever. Yeah,
and that's the thing that I think is crazy about your gym, is that you have people there who have serious aches and pains.
Yeah.
And that like have serious joint issues and body issues. And they're still there, modified workouts, because you're so awesome at that. But they don't use that as an excuse to not go.
Right.
Pretty cool.
And I think there are two categories of people, and I've learned this over the years of doing this. There's people who are going to come up with an excuse no matter what, and there are people who are going to show up no matter what. There are people who are, I just had shoulder surgery 2 months ago, and I'm still not supposed to come back yet, but I'll come and do leg stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, awesome, bring it. Like, let's just avoid that, or like do physical therapy or whatever on it like you're supposed to.
Yeah.
And there's other people who are like, oh, well, I sneezed yesterday and I don't want to get people sick in case I have a cold. It's like, okay, you just want to come up with anything, you know? So you just have to be aware that exists, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not wrong. And it's the same with the church world.
Well, and I just had a thought of the struggle thing, and it doesn't make any tragedy or struggle better or easier, but it's entirely possible that God is using that to make a callus for you so you can play guitar better. Like maybe whatever tragedy or traumatic experience you went through is God saying, I'm not allowing this because you did something wrong. I'm allowing this to go through your life or become part of your life to build that callus so that later on in the road, because I have a plan for you.
Yeah.
And if you have the faith in the Bible, you have to believe that he has plans for you.
Yeah. I mean, Scripture says that.
That's what I'm saying.
Difficulty produces endurance. That don't waver from that, but rejoice in hardships because they produce character.
I think that's why it's important for us to stay in the Word, because then we can read things like that and be like, oh, I'm not supposed to just run away from difficulty or avoid it my whole life.
But we are told that God, in a way, is this divine genie who works how I want him to work.
Yeah.
And so when I'm going through hardship and I don't like how it's looking, it's because he's not doing what I want, so there must not be a God. Rather than, instead of asking the question, is there a God or is there not a God, am I thinking of the right God?
Yeah.
And so rather than just painting this picture of God who looks like us and values the things that we value and prioritizes the things we value, rather than doing that, looking at ourselves and seeing if we value and prioritize the same things that God values and prioritizes. And when we do that, he's much more visible in our lives, I think.
Yeah. I agree.
Why do you think there's a God?
Why do I think there's a God? I mean, you can go as far as God existing or a creator existing. We covered that, and that's what I think too. I don't think this came from nothing.
Yeah,
I think it's slightly silly to think it just happened.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have my phone because it's recording us, so I can't like Google terminology and stuff. Oh, hey,
that's his phone right there.
That's you. Watch us on YouTube. But there's a word for like things that are kind of in disarray tend to become slightly more in disarray over time. Like things don't just, it's like a law of the universe. I don't know if it's Einstein or Isaac Newton, but it's one of the laws is things will slightly decompose, get further apart, get more disarray over time unless something acts upon it. So for like the Big Bang Theory is basically saying like all these particles exploded, and not only did they not just grow further apart and like spread out on this stuff. They came together to form the most intricate thing, which is the universe and the human brain. And all this stuff that exists in our world is like, it just doesn't make any sense to me that was by accident.
Yeah.
There's, in my opinion, there's no way. So boom, creator. There you go. Then, I mean, this could be a whole separate podcast, but then it's a question of, okay, well, God, the Lord, a creator exists. What religion or faith is quote unquote correct or even most correct? And then people could argue Islam or Christianity or Judaism or all these things.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's much of an argument to be made that Jesus didn't exist as a human, at least, just because of all the historical accounts of him outside of even the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, people, Muslims admit he existed. Everyone, as far as I can know, I haven't done extensive reading.
I mean, it's a historical fact that a man named Jesus existed.
Yeah. And was it historical fact that he was crucified as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So that lines up. Also, as far as biblically, I've heard a lot of historians have like dug into like using the Bible as a geographical like map, and most of the things that are in there kind of line up with how things actually are in the real world.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if we want to spend the time trying to prove Christianity now, but as far as God existing, that makes the most sense.
Yeah, and then you have the historical accounts of Jesus, and so then, like C.S. Lewis famously said, you have to decide whether he was a liar, a lunatic, or a lord.
Yeah,
and I think that's a great intro question.
I've heard that before too. Can you expand on that for people who might not have heard that before?
Yeah, so C.S. Lewis had this idea of liar, lunatic, or lord that said, when you look at Jesus' life and his teachings, he has to fit into one of those three categories. Either he's knowingly lying about all of these things and leading all of these people astray on purpose. He's a lunatic in that he actually believes all of this stuff, but it's not really true, and he's just crazy.
It's like delusional. Yeah.
Or he truly is the Lord, and that what he's saying is true. There's not really an option where he was a good teacher or a good man or a good rabbi, because if the stuff he's saying wasn't true, then he wasn't a good teacher and a good man and a good rabbi.
Yeah.
He was leading these people astray. And so he has to fit into one of those categories, either a liar, a lunatic, or a lord, based on what he said and what I believe. I put him in the category of Lord. But too many people try to just say that Jesus he wasn't actually the Son of God. He wasn't actually the Messiah. He was a good teacher. He was a good man, a good example. But that doesn't track with what he was saying and what he was doing. Either what he was saying was true, or he was a psychopath.
Yeah,
because it wasn't true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's a good intro question into thinking through whether what he says in Scripture is valid and good and true, and that can be a conversation for another time. But
I think I've looked into Islam a little bit, and it seems to me what they teach is that. So growing up, I assumed that like Muslims hate Christians, but that's just a really small part of Muslims or Islams. And it seems to me, based on what I've looked into, that the majority of them believe Jesus was a prophet for God, but he was not the Son of God. But they do believe that Jesus was sent by God as a prophet to preach like God's word. And I didn't know that. And I think that's like common misinformation for people, because faiths and like, different religions are like different teams in a sport. It's like you pick your team and everyone else is the worst. It's like, well, what if you were just like, hey, maybe we could look into it with non-aggression and anger.
Yeah.
Just to learn, if nothing else. Like, let me learn.
And when you say that nothing they say is true,
what if they agree with you on stuff?
Yeah, then you're setting yourself up for failure.
I just think it's interesting and good to also know what other people believe, so that you can have a better understanding too, especially if you want to try and evangelize to people to kind of understand where they're coming from and have some common ground.
Yeah.
Because if Muslims will say, "Oh, Jesus was sent by God," like, cool, we're on the same page.
Yeah,
you got some common ground, right? And then you can kind of, discuss different things after that. But
go from there.
Yeah,
yeah. But if you say, "Oh, you're Muslim," never mind, I don't want to talk to you.
Right. And I think that they would fit I think the Lord Lunatic Liar argument would be an interesting one
for them,
to push that one, because they think he's a good prophet sent by God, but not God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A good prophet who said he was God.
We can talk about that a different day too. I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to push those buttons right now. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I have a lot of devil's advocate points.
That's good.
To that. So, but we'll save it.
Questions are good.
Let's
revel in the questions.
It's good, yeah. I think it's important to ask questions and be okay with asking questions.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
There's too much that says you just got to believe and not ask questions. That's
sit your tookus in the chair.
Yeah.
And listen. Follow along.
Tookus in the chair. Give me your money and
don't ask.
Believe everything I say.
Yeah.
And don't question anything.
Yeah. And don't forget to donate.
And don't forget to donate. Right. Oh, the church. That's great. Come to Cedar Creek Community Church.
Yeah.
Where we try not to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that answered some questions and we were able to think through some stuff.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was helpful for people. Yeah. And then this would be interesting to start having people ask us questions to try and work on. So if you enjoyed this and you have questions that came up from our discussion, comment on whatever we're posting this on, YouTube or Instagram or wherever it is.
Yeah.
Leave us comments and questions, and there's a good chance we'll
talk about them.
Touch on it, because you'll probably be one of two commenters. So
2 commenters.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, let us know the questions so we can answer it.
Or if you know us individually, you can just text us or call us and talk to us. And
But thanks for listening.
We appreciate you guys
so much. We'll talk to you next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye, Toothbrush.